Are you falling into the induction trap? First of all, let me just tell you that the biggest reason for a lot of cesareans and the rising cesarean rates every single year is because of induction. In fact, we have an induction epidemic at the moment. It seems like everybody is getting induced, and you might even be falling into that trap and not even know it. What do I mean by that? First of all, with fear, you are basically making decisions to avoid something going wrong. You are also making decisions based on what your care provider is telling you to do. And I'm just going to tell you that your care provider does not always have your best interests at heart. In fact, often they are operating on profit, convenience, and liability. They're operating on the premise of avoiding a disastrous outcome that may be 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 10 million. And they're not thinking about what this is going to do to your birth experience. I'm just going to tell you one really scary thing that I found out when I was digging through the Society of Obstetrics and Gynecologists of Canada guidelines years ago when I first became a birth advocate. And it's this, that you are 3 times more likely to have a cesarean if you are a first-time mom. This data checks out. And in fact, if you continue to follow the statistics from your own local hospital or from your health authority or from your province or state or wherever you happen to be living in the country, you're going to start to see the correlation that as induction rates rise every year, so do cesarean rates. You can even just go into a mom group. See how many times moms say that they are being pushed into an induction or that they had an induction. And then they end up telling you their story about how they had an induction, they failed to progress, they failed to dilate, their baby went into distress, and they had a C-section. This is not by accident. In fact, I have lots of videos on why you do not want to induce your labor unless it's medically necessary. I also recorded a class not too long ago on what true physiological birth, the true natural birth, looks like, as opposed to what it looks like in the medical system. So make sure you check out that video as well. Now, here's the bottom line, though, is that if you don't want to fall into the induction trap, then you really need to pay attention to what I'm about to tell you, because it's going to help you to start to tune in and recognize when something might be a trap without knowing the whole list. So, number 1, if you yourself feel that your baby is healthy, that you are otherwise healthy, there is no reason to induce. If when a care provider is telling you that you have to induce because of policy or because of some scary statistic that they throw out there, or because that's just what they do once you get to a certain point, or because you're high risk, I will talk about that more in another video, but let me just tell you, if it doesn't feel right to you, if you're now going onto the mom groups and you're asking, do I really need to induce, or how do I wrap my head around this induction? How do I get into a positive birth space for it? How do I allow myself to go for this when I really don't want to? That's actually your intuition kicking in and saying, hey, we don't actually think this is necessary. We don't actually think this is needed, but we think we have no options. Let me just tell you something about that. If that's you, if you're thinking, I have to go for this induction because there's no other choice, they're telling me I have to do this, and it doesn't feel right to me, but I'm just a mom. What do I know? These doctors, they have 20 years of experience. Obviously, I should just defer to them. I'm just going to tell you that that's not what you want to do. In fact, this is how a lot of my clients have started out their empowered birth journey, where they had a traumatic birth experience, and it started with induction, an induction that they knew in their heart wasn't right for them, didn't feel right. Maybe the medical system said that they were too old. Maybe the medical system said they were too fat. Maybe the medical system said they had a big baby and they had a small pelvis. Maybe the medical system told them that because they were not showing signs of labor yet, that they were going to go overdue, and then they were going to end up having a big baby, or baby was going to go into distress, or any number of things, or otherwise they were failure to progress. And the truth is, it's not that. In fact, one of my favorite books on the subject of physiological birth, The True Natural Birth, is called Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage. But Rachel Reed writes another book, and it's called Why Induction Matters. So if you have any questions when it comes to induction, the statistics, which I will be going through in other videos, if you have any questions, I really recommend that you pick up that book. In fact, I gift that to my clients. So the other thing you need to know is that a lot of the so-called reasons for induction are not reasons. I'm just going to give you a quick overview, but I will be going into the induction traps in a later video. And if you do want to know more, you can always go to my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com. Check out my free natural birth guides, which also give you the natural birth traps that you want to avoid, which a lot of these natural birth traps are also induction traps. So I actually lay it all out. I also have an induction guide in my shop. So you can just go to empoweringmomsbirth.com, go to the shop, and you'll be able to pick up that guide as well. And it also goes into the details of questions you want to ask before you agree to an induction. Now, here is the thing that you really need to know, though. To avoid most of these induction traps requires one thing. You need to know that you are planning a natural birth. If you're just sort of guessing and saying, oh, maybe I'll have a natural birth, I'd really like to not get induced, but, you know, things happen, guess what? The medical system is basically trained and indoctrinated to think that birth is going to go wrong. That's how obstetrics works. Obstetricians are surgeons. They are not the protectors of physiological birth. The other thing is your midwife, though they have good intentions, sometimes their hands are tied as well. So you have to recognize that just because your midwife is really pushing for induction at 41 weeks or 42 weeks and saying that you can't birth with them if you go past your due date, that's actually putting a lot of stress on you. It's not fair. And it's not because it's dangerous to go past your due date. It's more because your midwife is basically being told by the insurance companies, we're not going to cover you if you go and do this thing because of such and such risk. Even if that risk is 1 per 1,000 or 2 per 1,000, the insurance companies don't want that. But they're not allowed to tell you that, because if they tell you that, then they get in trouble. So I have been with birth workers for over a decade now. I've been talking to them. I know their struggles. I know what they wish that they could tell you. I also have had 2 physiological births. I understand how natural birth works. I've supported moms who were induced, possibly even multiple times. There's been moms who are induced with every single pregnancy. And then they go on and they're like, you know what? This is my 4th baby. This is my last chance to have a natural birth. And I am not inducing unless it's a true emergency. But I'm worried that the medical system is going to push me into another induction, because if I don't go into labor by their timeline, they're going to think that there's something wrong, and I just don't want that fear. I don't want to have to fight. I don't want to have to beg. I don't want to have to compromise. I don't want to have to just give up on my plan. I just really want to have this natural birth experience. So these moms, they usually come to me. They've been induced or they've had multiple cesareans as a result of their induction, and then they've gone on to have these beautiful, spontaneous, completely natural births, often hands off. And they're just like, I did it. My body works. And it's like, well, your body always worked. It's not that you failed, and it's not that your body failed. The medical system and our birth culture failed you. And that's what I really teach on empoweringmomsbirth.com. If you check out some of my resources, I basically help you to take your power back when it comes to your birth. So instead of planning your birth with the fear mindset of what if something goes wrong, you go in basically saying, I've got this. I know that I can birth this baby. With or without anybody's permission, I know I can do it. And I would like to have some support. Maybe you want to hire a midwife. Maybe it's a doula, or maybe you want to go completely unassisted. And hey, if you want to go completely unassisted, that's my favorite kind of birth to support as well. So you can always send me a message. But I also love unassisted birth in the hospital, because that allows the medical system to actually witness what true physiological birth looks like, which then informs their practice, which then allows them to not restrict birth as much as they do with their past clients. They find a new way of supporting. And then that allows us to have more options, because sometimes we have to go to the hospital. Sometimes we do want to have that extra bit of support. We should be able to have that without having to fight, without having to beg, without having to compromise. If you want to know more, just go to my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com, where I have a bunch of resources that will help you to plan and get your true natural birth experience, avoid the induction traps, avoid cesarean traps, natural birth traps, and basically avoid making all of the mistakes that lead to a traumatic birth. All right? And I'm just going to leave you with this one last thing. If you don't want to induce and you see no reason to induce, it does not matter that your doctor wants to induce. You can say no. You have the right to informed consent and refusal. You have that right to decline any and all interventions, even if it's life-threatening. Even if your biggest reason why you're not doing it is because it happens to be the lunar month of Sagittarius, for instance. If you wanted to take a horoscope and say, my horoscope said that I should not have an induction, your doctor still can't argue with it. If you wanted to say, well, you know, I was talking to the cat the other day, like I'm really trying to show you just how very little you have to actually prove that you don't need an induction. You don't have to prove yourself to be allowed to do it. You just say no. You just say no. You can have it as completely out there as possible. You can go and take a tarot card and you can just throw that up there and say, this tarot card says that I don't have to induce, so I'm not going to induce. And your doctor can't argue with it. They really can't. So when moms are usually in the mom groups and they're asking, where's the evidence to prove to my doctor that I don't have to induce? They said that I'm going to have to induce unless I can come up with some proof that I don't need to. It's not on you to put the proof. You can just go ahead and be as wild and out there as you want to just show them. I mean, just have fun with it, or just think about it in your head. The fact is that you could go and take a tarot card or an astrology book or anything that is not scientific, and that can be your basis. You could have a vision and say, no, I had a vision that my baby is supposed to be born at this date, and it's supposed to happen without induction. And then, like, your doctor can't argue with you. And hey, maybe it's true. Maybe you did have a vision and your baby is supposed to be born at such and such date. I'm not even going to knock that, because there's so much out there that we can't always explain away with science and facts. But that's what I really want to leave you with, is to know that no matter what induction trap that you might be falling into, the one thing you need to know is this: if you don't want it, that's an answer. You don't have to be okay with it. If you don't want it, if you don't think it's necessary, if you're still feeling like, yeah, you're giving me all these reasons, but that doesn't feel true to me, that's an answer. You don't have to compromise by getting that induction. You don't have to fight. You don't have to prove yourself. You don't have to beg permission to be able to go an extra day. You just don't do it. They can't make you. All right. So I will see you soon, and make sure you check out my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com, for more.